unusually large children bringing up the tail of that first group. Do you know anything about? They look to be on green frog bikes, possibly wearing like some gray and pink.
I'm gonna have to get to the video playback and check that out.
Yeah.
Good evening. Welcome to Rail Talk. I'm Alex Single.
And I am Nolan Samuel Adams.
Good evening. All right, let's. Nolan, why don't you run us through quickly what our race schedule was tonight?
Tonight was awesome, much longer than some of the nights we've had previously. We had a medium-sized scratch, we had a missing out, and then we had long points races. Long insofar in that we have not done something that long yet, but further in the season we will see even longer races. But tonight for the 1-2 men, it was a 50-lapper, which was enough for me.
Yeah. We clearly have very different definitions of awesome. All right, let's go right into the racing then. Let's start with our open women's field. Let's start with the scratch. So I think big theme I saw in the women's racing tonight was Hillary Luther up from Portland really animating the racing. That said, I think didn't end up victorious in that race. That was Danny Scoville. Yeah. So scratch race won by Danny Scoville. At the point tied with Annette Williams and Tori Park, who was not here tonight, for the overall Rider of the Year lead in the women's race. So no surprise to see them both at the front. Good race there.
Continued domination by a select few in the women's field. Not a surprise there for us to see those couple folks on the front, off the front, really making things dynamic. But I will fully agree, Hillary Luther definitely threw a wrench maybe in some plans of some of the locals. But love to see it. I love how dynamic it's been.
Yeah, and shout out to a new rider making an appearance on the podium in both the first two races, which is Rue Tomko. They had a fantastic couple early races. Also solid in that points race, picking up fifth. So great to see some fresh faces up at the front. All right, into the elimination.
Next race for the women was the elimination.
All right.
The second race of the night for the ladies was the missing out. What was the dynamics like there, Alex?
Well, so missing out, slightly different from an elimination in that you actually just pulled down to 3 riders and then they get 2 laps to complete the race. We got down to our final 3 of Rue Tomko, Annette Williams, and Danny Scoville. This time, I think you could really see the fatigue from how hard that race is, because when Annette hit the front, Danny certainly looked like she was going to try to make a move around, but just couldn't get there. Great racing from all 3 of them, and always fun to watch that race.
Finally, we had the points race for the women.
Yep.
What were the results like there at the top?
Well, so some of the same names we've been talking about all evening. Hillary Luther didn't end up victorious, but was on the lead, same lead in points. You saw she got in some early moves and really got a nice haul of points. But ultimately, at the very end, final sprint of the evening, Danny picked up those extra points in the final sprint, and based on the tiebreaker of having finished ahead of Hillary, picked up the win. So she finished the night with first, second, and another first. So great night for her. Also, that points race being our Rider of the Year race, she now has sole possession of the lead. So no longer a 3-way tie.
Fantastic. And I will say, I don't know what their fitness ramps are like. Obviously, I don't know what their training programs are like, but I got to figure that Danny is hoping to peak obviously for Junior Nats, which is here at the Jerry Baker Memorial Velodrome, and so I would continue to expect to see her perform better in some of these longer races as the season progresses, in comparison to some of the other riders who maybe are also doing road earlier in the season or just doing other things with their lives. But great racing from the women tonight. Pretty darn dynamic, but the familiar faces still at the front for pretty much every race.
Indeed.
On to the men's racing here. The scratch was first. I was in that race somewhat towards the back, didn't really see what was happening at the front. The results do tell a story, but were you in there for longer than I was?
Absolutely.
Did you see what was happening?
Not really.
All right.
I was similarly present. I think that race it was pretty well. It actually started slow, but then got real fast real quick.
Did it?
I think we had 3 laps that were
contemplative.
At a leisurely pace.
I will note that it was pretty breezy. I felt like there was a bit more wind this tonight than in previous nights, and I think that kept everything a bit more It was more dynamic because of that, but if you were sheltered, especially on the back stretch, you could hide a little bit. So maybe if you were in the back, there was some shelter.
Yeah, I think let's not talk about the win, but let's actually talk about preems, because we actually, I think, had our first preems of the season, 2 of them, and Galen Erickson, I think, actually ended up picking up both. He went real hard for that first one. Tyson Danielson made a big effort to, I think, he said he knew he wasn't going to get that preem, but if they could get a gap, that the 2 of them could work together, and that's sure what they did for a while, right up until the next preem, where Galen hit it again, field blew up, and that was all she wrote. But he comes away with $50.
Are you saying they were off the front for a while?
I think they were.
I did not know that. That is news to me.
Yeah.
Well, congrats to them. Seems like they got in a good workout for the evening, certainly. And then Galen picking up some money, go buy himself some milkshakes, some beers, whatever it is.
Commentator's tip, if you actually go completely off the back and go several laps down, it is a little easier to see what's happening in the middle of the race instead of just being stuck on the back.
Great pro tip, Alex.
Yeah.
Might take advantage of that next week.
Indeed.
So who ended up taking the victory on that one?
That was Merrick.
I've heard that name before.
Yes, Merrick Gallagher. Tall, junior, fast.
Also ramping into peak form for junior Nats.
Yeah, and he's going to be coming down to Elite Nationals as well, so that's going to be exciting to see.
I'm nervous for the elites.
It's going to be some great racing.
Fantastic.
Into the missing out.
The missing out, not the elim.
Not
missing
the
out.
Yep.
Pulled down to 5. I was present in this one longer. I know some stuff here. It was dynamic. There was a lot of bumping, and there were 28 total riders. So it was a long one. It was more of a fatigue, sort of more of attritional, if you will.
Yep.
There kind of, at some points, there was some kind of pace line effect towards the front. It was washing machine, which is very typical for that style of racing.
When you get that big, that wave that's coming out of turn 4, that goes all the way up to the rail, and that gets a little nerve-wracking. But everyone kept it upright. There was some contact, but hey, safe racing, always good to see.
I do want to point out here, as dynamic as our race was, the Cat 3 race for the missing out was tremendous. A tremendous watch. I highly recommend you go rewind the YouTube live stream. I don't know what minute mark it is, but go find it. Way more exciting than any other race tonight, I believe. Halfway through, no, I wouldn't say halfway through, maybe a third of the way into the missing out, there was a rider, Justin Pryor from KR, went off the front solo. I think he had enough of the field, said, I'm just going to go TT my way to victory. And then slowly but surely, some of the other stronger riders from the back of the field decided to bridge up to them, and they just continued on, which left some folks out the back going, what just happened?
Yep. Group of, I think, about 5 up the road, just kind of pulling turns, and then so all the elimination, was happening behind.
Split field. I want to say they're about 100 meters back or so, and I think once the strongest riders went up the road, it was tough for those people. I mean, what do you do? Like, if you're not going to make that bridge, you're kind of just resigned to whatever place that was. Going to be 6th place or something. Fellow teammate of mine, Mike Ritter, held on for the best of the rest, if you will, for 6th place, but then the top 5 all went to that breakaway group. I didn't actually catch who won that one.
That would be Gavin Newman.
Those Epics.
One of the junior riders from Portland, Epic, East Portland Youth Cycling. So he had a great race. I think actually it was a full Epic sweep of all 3 Cat 3 races. So it was Jack, Gavin, and then Jack again, and those guys are riding in an 88-inch gear.
Tiny.
Gear.
For perspective, the rest of y'all watching at home, that is a significant disadvantage, you could say, because they are capped at a gear limit. If you are not a junior rider, you can run whatever sort of gear ratios you would like, but they're capped to 88 gear inches, which means they have to spin their little hearts out to go off the front, which they did.
Well, if we're going to talk about spinning, I'm going to give a special shout out to Keegan Fairbanks from the Jerry Baker Junior team.
True story.
Who I believe is on an 82, which is quite a thing to see. He is, sprinting at full speed and probably about 160 RPMs. It's really remarkable and one of my favorite things to watch on the track.
He had some really good results tonight as well.
Yep.
I don't believe that they made it into the top 3 for the podium. I think maybe wide angle podium, if you will. Third place. I'm getting 3rd place from the director behind the camera. Fantastic result then, and look forward to seeing more from that whole crew, really, all the juniors.
What if he ends up upgrading? and going into the 1-2s on an 82-inch gear. That's going to be a thing to see.
We're going
Sight to
to,
behold.
Amara, comment below.
Yeah. Alrighty. So just real quick to tie it off in the men's missing out. Andrew Martin did win that race. I think you said it was attritional. You can see a guy who's got just a lot of miles. Great endurance rider taking the win there. Finally into our last races of the evening, the points race. Very, very, very long points race.
50 laps, longest thing we've done so far this year. I want to say that there were points attributed to a vast array of people, but ultimately Merrick and Galen and who else would have been up at the front? Probably Andrew and Colin and Sam. The frequent flyers on the podium, I think, wrapped up most of the points.
They sure did,
and took it home. So for the evening's totals, Merrick took the win for the night with 19 points. Andrew came in second with 11, and Galen Erickson wrapped up a 10th, a wide angle podium. We're doing it. Fourth, Colin, and Sam Frigo in fifth with 4 points. What about for the women? Who was the top 5?
So Danny, Annette, so yeah, usual suspects. Hillary, Rue, and then Kelly Darlene, who, by the way, I should mention, was given real credit by some of her fellow racers for keeping the race really rolling and moving in that points race. Every time it slowed down, she would just get right back on the front and bring that speed right back up. So good for her.
I think she had to get home to study, if I'm honest. I think she just needs the night to wrap up.
All right, we're going to introduce a new section. It's only our second podcast or video cast, whatever we're calling this thing. But hey, we're going to do something new. We're going to try it out. We're going to call this Beyond the Podium.
Beyond the Podium. Tell me more about that.
It is just a selection of a performance that you saw where maybe they weren't on the podium or even our wide angle podium, but just a great performance that stood out to you.
I think one of the highlights for me tonight was the fan club. Honestly, we had a lot of folks out for the Kitty Kilo, which we'll talk about in a sec, but most notably, somewhere between turn 1 and turn 2, huge fan club for Tom Herrick, a Cat 3 junior rider. He had, I don't know how many friends out. That must have been at least close to a dozen friends, all cheering for them up in the turn, and it really brought the party to the race. And stoked to see that, and Tom was loving it. And I think honestly, I saw him a little bit more dynamic today. It's kind of amazing what a little bit of peer pressure can do for your performance.
Absolutely. And he actually told me he's a junior at Overlake High School, and this is a bunch of seniors. So good for him getting the upperclassmen to pull behind him.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see more of them out next time.
Maybe. It'd be nice. I will say I'm going to give a shout out to Amara Edwards, a name we all know very well around this track, right? She is our program director. She is the head coach of the juniors, but she is managing our race night and racing, and I think got better as the night went on, and ended up taking the final sprint for 10 points in that women's point race to finish off the night. So great ride from her. Always fun to see her, showing the flashes of her ability. So good for Amara. Good times.
Fantastic night. I think it was an attendance high from us this evening so far this year. Obviously, we expect to see bigger things when we have maybe a little bit even warmer weather, and obviously during some of our bigger events later this year. But tonight's attendance was really boosted by the fact that we had over 100 kids in the Kitty Kilo, which is, I don't know if that's a record or not, but it sure looked like a lot of kids roaming around on scoot bikes, scooters, pedal bikes, mountain bikes, some track bikes. It was it was everything you could have imagined. Didn't see any rollerblades, but I think that's okay. That's probably not quite what we're looking for out here.
I saw some unusually large children bringing up the tail of that first group. Do you know anything about? They look to be on green frog bikes, possibly wearing like some gray and pink.
I'm gonna have to get to the video playback and check that out.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar, but I can't really put a finger on it.
Yeah, pretty sure that was you.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep, you and Jamie Park, I believe.
No, I would never. Yeah. I would never, Alex.
Not even on the podium in the kids race.
Speaking of which, I got to go to bed. So I think we should wrap this up tonight. Thank you for joining us here on Rail Talk. I've been Nolan. This has been Alex. Good night.
Good night.